Chapter 17 of Elusive Isabel. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Title Chapter: A Call on the Warden. The restful silence of the night lay over the great prison. Here and there in the grim corridors, a guard dozed in the glare of an electric light, and in the office, too, a desk light glimmered where the warden sat at his desk, poring over a report. Once he glanced up at the clock. It was 5 minutes of 11, and then he went on with his reading. After a little, the silence was broken by the whir of the clock and the first sharp stroke of the hour. And at just that moment, the door from the street opened and a man entered. He was rather tall and slender, and a sinister black mask hid his face from the quickly raised eyes of the warden. For a bare fraction of a second, the two men stared at each other. Then, instinctively, the warden's right hand moved toward the open drawer of his desk, where a revolver lay, and his left towards several electrically connected levers. The intruder noted both gestures and, unarmed himself, stood silent. The warden was first to speak. "Well, what is it?" "You have a prisoner here, Pietro Petrosini," was the reply in a pleasant voice. "I have come to demand his release." The warden's right hand was raised above the desktop, and the revolver in it clicked warningly. "You have come to demand his release?" he queried. He still sat motionless, with his eyes fixed on the black mask. "How did you pass the outside guard?" "He was bribed," was the ready response. "Now, warden," the masked intruder continued pacifically, "it would be much more pleasant all around, and there would be less personal danger in it for both of us if you would release Signor Petrosini without question. I may add that no bribe was offered to you because your integrity was beyond question." "Thank you," said the warden grimly, "and it shall remain so as long as I have this." He tapped on the desk with the revolver. "Oh, that isn't loaded," said the masked man quietly. One quick glance at the weapon showed the warden that the cartridges had been drawn. His teeth closed with a snap at the treachery of it, and with his left hand he pulled back one of the levers, that which should arouse the jailers, turnkeys, and guards. Instead of the insistent clangor which he expected, there was silence. "That wire has been cut," the stranger volunteered. With clenched teeth, the warden pulled the police alarm. "And that wire was cut too," the stranger explained. The warden came to his feet with white face and nails biting into the palms of his hands. He still held the revolver as he advanced upon the masked man threateningly. "Not too close now," warned the intruder, with a sudden hardening of his voice. "Believe me, it would be best for you to release this man, because it must be done, pleasantly or otherwise. I have no desire to injure you, still less do I intend that you shall injure me, and it will be needless for either of us to make a personal matter of it. I want your prisoner, Signor Petrosini. You will release him at once. That's all." The warden paused, dazed, incredulous before the audacity of it, while he studied two calm eyes which peered at him through the slits of the mask. "And if I don't release him?" he demanded at last fiercely. "Then I shall take him," was the reply. "It has been made impossible for you to give an alarm," the stranger went on. "The very men on whom you most depended have been bought, and even if they were within sound of your voice now, they wouldn't respond. One of your assistants, who has been here for years, unloaded the revolver in the desk there, and less than an hour ago cut the prison alarm wire. I, personally, cut the police alarm outside the building. So, you see?" As yet, there was no weapon in sight, save the unloaded revolver in the warden's hand. At no time had the stranger's voice been raised. His tone was a perfectly normal one. Besides yourself, there are only 5 other men employed here who are now awake, the masked man continued. These are 4 inner guards and the outer guard. They have all been bought. The turnkeys at $5,000 each, and the outer guard at $7,000. The receipt of all this money is conditional upon the release of Signor Petrozzini. Therefore, it is to their interest to aid me as against you. I am telling you all this, frankly and fully, to make you see how futile any resistance would be. But who is this Signor Petrozzini that such powerful influences should be brought to bear in his behalf? Demanded the bewildered warden. He is a man who can command a vast fortune, and Senor Alvarez is at the point of death. That, I think, makes it clear. Now, if you will sit down, please. Sit down! Bellowed the warden. Suddenly, he was seized by a violent, maddening rage. He took one step forward and raised the empty revolver to strike. The masked man moved slightly to one side, and his clenched fist caught the warden on the point of the chin. The official went down without a sound and lay still, inert. A moment later, the door leading into the corridor of the prison opened, and Signor Petrozzini, accompanied by one of the guards, entered the warden's office. The masked man glanced around at them and, with a motion of his head, indicated the door leading to the street. They passed through, closing the door behind them. For a little time, the intruder stood staring down at the still body. Then he went to the telephone and called police headquarters. There has been a jail delivery at the prison, he said in answer to the hello of the desk sergeant at the other end of the wire. Better send some of your men up to investigate. Who is that? Came the answering question. The stranger replaced the receiver on the hook, stripped off his black mask, dropped it on the floor beside the motionless warden, and went out. It was Mr. Grimm. End of chapter.